Thank you for joining, and I'll hand over to Chris.
Thank you, Hum. Good evening. Welcome to the I-495 I-90 Interchange Improvement Project Public Information Meeting. Tonight's meeting will highlight upcoming traffic milestones, including the I-495 southbound crossover, opening of ramp ES, and the next stage of Fruit Street construction. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us tonight. My name is Christopher Gagney. I work for Mass DOT Design Build Group based out of Boston, and I'm the project manager for this project. Massachusetts District 3 in Worcester is overseeing the final design and construction. I'm joined tonight by a few other team members who you will meet a little later. This public information meeting is the fifth in a series of briefings and updates that we'll be holding over the next 4 years as we move through various stages of construction. We will do our best to go through the presentation slowly, as some of the slides contain a lot of important and detailed information. Before we get into the presentation, we would like to go over some instructions on how to participate in tonight's discussion. For that, I will hand it over to Hung Pham from Mass DOT.
Thank you, Chris. Once again, my name is Hung Pham, and I'm one of your Mass DOT producers this evening, providing the technical support and facilitating questions alongside with Roy Kiowa. Let me take a moment to go over some Zoom basics. If you need to call into the meeting, you can call with the number you see on the screen, 646-876-9923. And please use the webinar ID 849-5168-7560. Zoom tech support can be reached at the 888 number you see on the right-hand side, which is 888-799-9666. On the bottom left, you can find your audio control. The chat function is disabled at this meeting, so please direct your written questions to the Q&A box. You can type the questions at any time, and we will answer them at the end of the presentation, where we will allow participants to ask questions verbally as well. You have entered the meeting on mute and will need to request access to unmute yourself by raising your hand at the bottom of the screen. Please note, while Zoom does provide automatic closed captions, they may not be entirely accurate. So next screen, please. As you already imagined or noticed, this virtual public meeting will be recorded or have been recorded. All parts of the public meeting are public records, so Mass DOT can retain and distribute all parts of the meeting. If you type a questions or ask one verbally, know that you will be part of the record. So please use both functions for project-related business only. If you are not comfortable being included in those types of records, you can choose to just listen in for today or excuse yourself from the meeting entirely. Again, we will have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. All questions and comments are welcome. However, please refrain from disrespectful comments. Lastly, a survey will pop up at the end of the hearing or meeting. Please take time to answer it. Your feedback is extremely important to us. Next slide. This slide talks about Mass DOT's policy on diversity and civil rights. If you need or would like to learn more about that, please go to and visit our website. That is www.mass.gov/non-discrimination-in-transportation-program. And with that, I'll pass it over to Chris. And Chris.
Thank you, Hung. We've broken our presentation down into 3 sections tonight. First is a high-level overview of the project, followed by a review of ongoing and upcoming construction of the I-495 southbound crossover, opening of ramp ES, the next stage of Fruit Street construction, as well as Whitehall Brook construction. Finally, we will provide an overview of our outreach and communication plan for the project. Following the presentation, we will open the meeting up for questions and responses by our team. Also, it's important to note that there will be multiple ways for people to receive information about the project as it progresses through construction. These will be covered at the end of the presentation. Tonight's panel includes representatives from Mass DOT, myself, Christopher Gagny, the PM, Jean-Pierre Telemaque, Assistant Construction Engineer from District 3, Joe Frawley, District 3 Operations Engineer, and our producers Hung Pham and Roy Kirwa from the Design Build team, Mark Shamp, the Project Manager from Barletta Heavy Division, Howard Goldberg from Barletta, Don Cook, the Design Manager from VHB, Josh Cohn-Roddy, VHB's Highway Lead, and Keith Sonia from Regina Villa Associates, presenting on outreach. Before we get into the details further into the presentation, I want to make some high-level points about the project. This is one of the largest projects Mass DOT has advertised for construction since inception in 2009. It is the only interstate to interstate interchange reconstruction ever taken on by Mass DOT. On an average day, well over 200,000 vehicles pass by or through this interchange. 50% of the state's commercial truck traffic passes through this interchange on an average day, and the interchange has been what we consider an interim condition since Mass DOT implemented AET on I-90 and removed the legacy toll booths in 2016 and 2017. We knew at the time that a larger project to completely update and modernize the interchange would be needed, which led to this project. Project goals. The interchange is plagued by chronic congestion, which leads to extensive backups on both 495 and I-90. Long queuing and congestion lead to long travel times throughout the area, as well as crashes. Substandard geometry and traffic weaves lead to crashes and rollovers. Remember that this interchange was originally designed for traffic to stop to pay their tolls. This project addresses all of these issues. Our schedule. This slide is on the project schedule. The project is currently in stage 1, and this construction season will begin stage 2. I will now hand the presentation to Don Cook from VHB.
Thanks, Chris. This project is a design build procurement, and there are two primary procurement methods that are used by MassDOT: design bid build and design build. As a design build project, that involves a preliminary design being developed and permitted by others, as opposed to design bid build, where the final design is finalized before going out for advertisement. Our team was selected to advance the preliminary design to final design and then to construct the new interchange. This project will therefore have concurrent design and construction happening over the 5-year total project duration. We are almost done advancing the preliminary design to final design. And for those of you who have been to our previous meetings, you know we presented each element of the design at previous public information meetings. As you are probably also aware, construction has commenced. Tonight, we will focus on an update to the current and upcoming construction activities, as well as related traffic changes and milestones. From a staging perspective, we have completed stage 0, which included early enabling work such as fiber optic cable relocation. And we are currently in stage 1, which includes continued work in the 495 median and future 495 bridges over I-90 and the railroad, Fruit Street Bridge construction, as well as work on ramps ES and WN, all of which we'll go into more detail tonight. So I'd like to start off with a general overview of the project for those who may have not been at some of our earlier meetings, followed by a more focused discussion on construction updates and upcoming traffic pattern changes. We've already covered a lot at our previous public information meetings. We had a general project overview meeting at the end of 2022. We presented Fruit Street and ramp ES and SE design details in January of last year. We presented I-495 and ramp WN in April of last year. And we presented I-90 and the 5 remaining new interchange ramps in September of 2023. All of the previous meeting materials can be found on the project website. But in general, the project limits extend about 3/4 of a mile in each direction along I-90 and I-495. The project includes complete replacement of the interchange. And the new interchange is to be constructed in an extremely sensitive environmental resource area, which continues to inform our design development as well as construction. Future I-90 will provide 3 lanes per direction as it does today. There will be minor horizontal and vertical changes to accommodate the new interchange ramps. The I-90 bridge over the MBTA commuter rail and the I-90 bridge over Whitehall Brook will both be replaced. Similarly, future 495 will also provide 3 lanes per direction as it does today. A major change that we will discuss tonight is that the future 495 northbound, which is currently being constructed in the existing median. I-495 southbound essentially stays where it is today. This will allow us to stage traffic during construction. Once the roadway is constructed in the median, we will temporarily move 495 southbound traffic to the median, while the future 495 southbound is being rebuilt in its existing footprint. Once that is complete, we will move 495 southbound to its final location and then ultimately move 495 northbound traffic permanently into the existing median area. Similarly, 495 bridges over I-90 and the MBTA commuter rail are being completely replaced. The 495 northbound bridge over Flanders Road will be rehabilitated with a superstructure replacement. There will be a 4th lane developed northbound from this interchange extending north to the Route 9 interchange. So those are the 2 main lines. I'd like to talk a little bit about the new ramp configurations. And you've already heard a little bit tonight, and so I just want to make sure everybody's aware. When we talk about ramp designations, it's not overly complicated. When you see a ramp WN, for example, in the upper right-hand corner, it means the ramp that will take I-90 westbound to 495 northbound, WN. For example, ramps ES take I-90 eastbound to 495 southbound. So we'll use those ramp designations throughout the night. So hopefully you can stay up on what we're talking about. And I apologize, we've been living this for a couple of years now, so it becomes sort of a second language for us. But as far as the ramp and the interchange itself, there are 8 completely new ramps being constructed. This will accommodate movements to and from I-90 east and westbound and I-495 north and southbound. The proposed ramps include direct connections, such as the ramp from 90 eastbound to 495 southbound and 90 westbound to 495 northbound. But there will also be ramps that include semi-direct and loop ramp connections to accommodate the rest of the required movements at the interchange. A number of the new ramps travel through the old toll plaza area, in this area here of the existing and future interchange. This allowed us to minimize impacts to surrounding environmental resource areas. However, in the future, they are separated both horizontally and vertically to eliminate the need to merge and weave through that area as you need to today. In addition to the interchange reconstruction, there are 2 other elements to the project. As many of you probably are aware, Fruit Street, the Fruit Street Bridge over 495 will be replaced completely in 2 major stages. And throughout that, we will maintain 1 lane of alternating traffic under signal control. The first major stage of Fruit Street is currently under construction. This work also includes roadway work on the approaches, utilities, and some landscaping features in and around the Fruit Street Bridge area. I mentioned a little bit early, Flanders Road. The 495 northbound bridge over Flanders Road will be replaced, its superstructure only. It will be constructed with an overbuild to maintain 3 lanes of travel on 495 northbound during all peak periods. There also will be some limited roadway and utility work below on Flanders Road. I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about items that are also typically of most concern to abutters and people who use the interchange. First, the interchange is being reconstructed in an extremely sensitive environmental resource area. Permits were issued during preliminary design, but they continue to inform all aspects of our final design and construction. Existing resource areas include the Cedar Swamp, ACEC, the Sudbury River, Whitehall Brook, as well as surrounding wetlands and floodplains. We are, as a team, in close coordination with MassDOT Environmental, but also with DEP and the Army Corps of Engineers. This coordination has been ongoing during design advancement, but will continue during and post-construction to assure compliance with the permits and that the required mitigation is provided. From a traffic perspective, on the main lines of I-90 and 495, the existing 3 lanes will be maintained except for short-term closures during off-peak hours, primarily overnight. All ramp connections between I-90 and 495 will be maintained, perhaps in a temporary alignment, but they will be maintained. From a local roadways perspective, Fruit Street, as mentioned, 1 lane will be maintained for alternating 2-way traffic under temporary signal control, and there could possibly be limited full closures at key stages in transitioning during construction. At Flanders Road, short-term lane closures on Flanders Road below 495 northbound may be necessary to support bridge and utility work. So that's the general overview of the project. So tonight we'd like to focus a little bit on both what's ongoing from a construction standpoint, but also what you should expect to see from a construction activity perspective over the next calendar year. So currently there are a number of proposed interchange elements under construction. The 2 future northbound bridges carrying I-495 over I-90 and the railroad are currently under construction. As mentioned, the first stage of Fruit Street, the northern portion, is wrapping up. Construction of ramp ES, the connection between I-90 eastbound and 495 southbound, is well underway. Ramp WN in the northeasterly quadrant of the interchange adjacent to Cumberland Farms is also under construction. There are 2 other components not shown on the graphic. One is we are already starting to widen 495 northbound over Flanders Road to prepare for that superstructure replacement. And we are starting some foundation work and foundation work on some of the ramp WS piers. We have some photos here of the construction. Some of it's hard to see as you possibly drive through the area, so we thought we'd take a minute and give you a couple of different perspectives that you might not see from the roadway. First, some photos of the new bridge that will carry relocated 495 southbound traffic initially, but eventually 495 northbound traffic over I-90. You can see the photos of the bridge deck being finalized, but also an aerial view for perspective between the barrels of 495 northbound and southbound. Similarly, we have some photos of the new bridge that will carry 495 over the railroad. Again, you can see photos of the bridge deck being finalized, but also an aerial of the view of the new bridge over the railroad. Sharing some photos now of Fruit Street reconstruction. It presents the current half of the bridge was demolished while traffic was maintained on the old existing side of the bridge. Construction is well along with utility coordination currently underway. And last but not least, when you look at ramp ES, which connects again the Pike eastbound to 495 southbound, you can see where in the lower right, where you initially today leave 490 eastbound in a temporary ramp, but you can see the future ramp being built alongside. The larger photo shows the area where it will join back with 495 southbound. And then you can see the extensive retaining wall along that new ramp, which is needed to minimize the impacts to the adjacent environmental resource areas. One last thing I'd like to touch on is ramp WN. We've started construction on ramp WN. You can see pictures of the bulkhead, which allows us to launch out into the trestle, which needs to be built first, adjacent to the future ramp and bridges. That trestle is actually completed now. You see this aerial, it was about maybe 2/3 done, but it actually is done through that existing wetland and pond area. And we've begun construction on some of the coffer dams, which are needed to prepare some of the substructure and foundation elements. So that's all that's going on now. Not all that's going on, but that's everything that's going on from a large perspective currently. But we thought we'd talk a little bit about what you'll see in the coming months. So after existing 495 southbound is shifted into the median area, construction will begin on the future 495 southbound bridges over I-90 and the MBTA commuter rail. Similarly, work on the future 495 southbound main line will start, essentially in the footprint of the existing I-495 southbound barrel. Traffic will be shifted to the newly constructed side of Fruit Street, and demolition of the remaining structure and construction of the rest of the proposed Fruit Street Bridge will begin. Work will continue on WS and also get started on SE. As I said, traffic will be shifted easterly on 495 northbound, and work on the 495 northbound over Flanders Road superstructure will begin. Initial stages of I-90 over Whitehall Brook will begin, and some of these we're going to get into much more detail in a little bit. And finally, work on the I-90 bridge over the railroad will also start within the next calendar year. When we turn all of these on, you can see a large portion of the project site will have construction activity in 2024 and early 2025. I'd like to turn it over now to Anu from our team to discuss some upcoming traffic patterns changes related to this construction. Anu?
Thanks, Tom. So I am going to discuss the upcoming major traffic shifts in much greater detail that is expected within the project area in the next year or so. So this slide, which is the implementation of I-495 southbound crossover. After the completion of the future I-495 northbound roadway and the bridges in the existing median, we are going to shift all 3 lanes of the existing I-495 southbound traffic into the median. You can kind of see that in the green arrows here. And this will allow us to demo and construct the existing southbound barrel, and hence the future southbound barrel. The existing northbound will remain in its current alignment. You can kind of see in the pink arrows. We are going to provide some temporary ramp connections from this I-495 southbound crossover to the former toll plaza area and, continuing on to 90 ramps. The implementation schedule is sometime in summer 2024, post Memorial Day. And the next few slides, we are going to take a deeper dive into this crossover, starting from the northern end and finishing at the southern end. Let's look at the northern limits. So the image to the left is kind of where you see that orange circle is the location of the northern crossover limits, which is just north of the MBTA railroad bridge. The image to the right in blue is the crossover itself. And as I mentioned before, all 3 lanes of 495 southbound traffic will be shifted into the median. Again, the 495 northbound will remain in its current alignment. Let's look at the temporary ramp connection. So as I mentioned, 495 southbound crossover is in the median. You can see that orange circle, that's where I am. That's where the temp ramp connection is going to be provided. You can see in green here, that's the temporary ramp connection. The ramp is SESW, that's the off ramp. And the blue is the 495 southbound crossover. That's going to continue further south. We will go further south into the southern limits. This time around, we are going to look at the southern crossover. That's right on the, in the left image, again, the orange circle. And on the right, you could see the 495 southbound crossover in blue. And all 3 lanes will be coming out of the median and joining back with the existing southbound alignment. The temporary 495 on-ramp, which is the ESWS ramp, will be coming from I-90 via the toll plaza and joining this 495 southbound main line. Again, that's shown in green in the right image. That kind of completes our journey of this 495 southbound crossover. And next, we will look at the ramp ES opening. So ramp ES is a proposed direct ramp that connects I-90 eastbound to I-495 southbound. This ramp is scheduled to open sometime in fall of 2024. The next few slides, I will walk through the alignment of this new ramp, starting with the off-ramp that leaves the I-90 eastbound main line and ending at where it joins the 495 southbound main line. So let's take a look. The orange circle in the left image highlights the location of where the ramp kind of gets off from I-90 eastbound main line. And the right image shows in much greater detail how the ramp will come off the I-90 eastbound main line. Essentially, we will have two separate off-ramps. So it'll be exit 106A and 106B. The first ramp will be ES, which is shown in blue, and is a new direct ramp that goes to I-495 southbound. The second ramp, which is further east, will be the old enabling ramp, which is kind of in the purple, that will carry only the EN traffic through the toll plaza area, and then it'll be heading to I-495 northbound. If you travel this area today, there is only one exit, which is exit 106, that carries both ES and EN through the toll plaza area. Next slide. Looking at the other side, where ES will join I-495 southbound main line, again, the orange circle in the left image. The right image shows in greater detail on how it's going to join. You can see the ES ramp sort of highlighted in blue, which will be the new direct ramp connection to I-495 southbound. And before it merges with the main line, it will first join with a temporary ramp connection for WS ramp, which is in green, coming from the toll plaza area. The next slide is just a reminder that what the final condition is going to look like when the project is finished. It's going to be we will have only one exit ramp consisting of 2 lanes coming off of I-90 eastbound. And then it'll split. The ES continues shown in orange down onto 495 southbound. I'll now hand over to Don to talk about other major traffic shifts this year. Don?
Thanks, Anu. So we had mentioned Fruit Street a few times tonight, but just add a little bit more detail. Later this summer, once the final utility coordination is complete, on the side of the bridge that's been under construction, the newer bridge, traffic will be shifted onto that newer constructed portion of the bridge. Traffic will continue to be accommodated in a single lane, providing two-way travel under signal control, while the rest of the old Fruit Street Bridge will be demolished and reconstructed. As I mentioned, we expect this shift to take place during this summer as soon as the final utility coordination is complete. And last piece that we'd like to touch a little bit on tonight is Whitehall Brook. For most people traveling on I-90, you probably don't even realize that you travel over a brook just west of the existing interchange. That's Whitehall Brook. The structure that carries I-90 over that brook is part of rehabilitation and replacement of that structure is part of this project. So we are going to be commencing on that project a little bit later this year. Traffic shifts both eastbound and westbound will be required in multiple stages to complete this work. And those traffic shifts in this area here will also require some modifications to the westbound on-ramp and the eastbound off-ramp that Anu was just talking about. As we look into detail of what you might be expecting, oops, sorry, one too many, over the course of the next 12 months, it'll be the first 2 stages of that construction. Stage 0 will be really a prep stage where we'll be working primarily in the median of I-90, preparing the road for the follow-on stages where I-90 eastbound and westbound traffic will be shifted around. Stage 1, which is what I'm showing here, apologize, I'm trying to use my cursor and at the same time, actually shows the first significant stage of traffic shifting, where once we get the median prepped, we can shift the 3 lanes on I-90 eastbound slightly to the north and slightly into the median while we build and expand that structure over Whitehall Brook that is there today. So we will be building to the south while the eastbound traffic will be shifted into the median somewhat to the north. For this first stage 1, the I-90 westbound traffic stays essentially where it is today. So that'll be the first 2 stages of Whitehall that you'll see over the next calendar year. You'll see some barrier being set up relatively quickly to create the center median work zone where we start to prepare the median. There's some roadway grading, there's some median reconstruction and some drainage work that has to happen in there. And then once that is complete later this year, we will have this first stage 1 shift of the eastbound traffic that allows us to build the first piece south of that shifted eastbound traffic. We'll come back next spring and talk about the resultant 2 stages where we shift westbound and eastbound traffic around a little bit differently so that we can step our way across and build the rest of that structure carrying I-90 over Whitehall Brook. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Keith Sonia from Regina Villa, who's leading our public outreach efforts.
Thank you, Don. The public outreach team is assisting MassDOT by implementing a comprehensive and informative outreach program. Ensuring that stakeholders are aware of the project and receive timely updates will help them plan their participation and choose ways to follow the project. We'd like to start by thanking our municipal partners in the towns of Hopkinton, Westboro, Southboro, Northboro, Marlboro, Milford, and Upton for helping us to publicize this meeting. Next slide. So we've held a number of public meetings, as you'll see here on the calendar and schedule, and we'll continue to hold briefings with local and state officials and neighborhood stakeholders as needed. We'll hold additional meetings before the start of major construction and at major project milestones. And again, this is the schedule that shows where we've been up to this point. But yeah, you can expect to continue to see us as we hit important milestones in the project. We'd like to thank everyone for supporting us in getting the word out about this meeting, including some of the local newspapers, the Metro West Daily News, and the Worcester Telegram and Gazette. Our social media outlets, including Facebook and Twitter/X. Our municipal partners, including the Hopkinton Chamber of Commerce, the Hopkinton Council on Aging, the Town of Hopkinton Disability Commission, and the Disability Commission of Westboro. Community organizations, including Central Massachusetts Planning Commission and the Westboro Senior Center, and the Corridor 9/495 Chamber of Commerce, and the Registry of Motor Vehicles. Thank you, folks. So stay connected with us. We're maintaining a robust email database, which includes key contacts from regional and local organizations, municipalities, and elected officials. We initially announced this project with a postcard to 1,200 property owners and invited them to sign up for emails. Those contacts and anyone else who has now chosen to sign up for our emails have and will continue to receive email updates on a regular basis before key project milestones and in advance of construction activities and traffic impacts. Our stakeholder database is continuously and will be continuously updated throughout the life of the project. For the latest project info, we do encourage you to visit our project website, where you can sign up for those email updates about the project, and where we'll continue to update that website with the latest construction and traffic info. You can also write us with questions or comments at 495-90 improvements@state.ma.us. And finally, you can find mass.info on social media channels like Facebook at mass.info and Twitter/X at massdot. Thanks again, folks. I'd like to turn it back over to Hung, who will discuss the question and answer format of the evening.
Thank you. Right. Get to that slide. Next slide. Yay. So to ask a question verbally, you can click on the raise hand icon, and you may have access to unmute your microphone. you need to unmute to let yourself be heard. If you prefer to type your questions, I saw that there are some questions already been typed out. You can click on the Q&A icon and write the questions, and we will read them out loud for you. For both methods, please ask only one question at a time. Currently, right now, I see that we have about 55 people in attendance. So please refrain from yourself of one question at a time, giving it about like 2 minutes, just so that we can address everybody's comments at the same time, and that's appropriate. I see that also there is actually a person who's on the phone. For that person, you can hit *9 to raise your hand, and then *6 to unmute yourself. And once again, I have a survey at the end of the meeting. Please complete the survey so that we can understand your experience and then better ourselves in the future. With that, I'll send it over to Dan for elected officials.
Good evening, folks. My name is Dan Rassicott. I work in the Legislative Affairs Department at Mass DOT. We want to open up the floor to elected officials or their staff who might be in attendance. If they would like to ask a question, now is a chance for them to make themselves known. Again, you don't feel compelled to do so, but if you'd like to, we'll just give it a minute for folks to unmute themselves and ask their question. If you are again an elected official or a member of their staff that would like to be recognized.
I don't see any hand raised.
Not seeing any hands. All right, easy enough. Well, thank you, folks. I know there's some of you on here, and we do appreciate you joining us. Back to you, Hung.
Thank you. I'll pass over to Roy for the Q&A.
Thank you, guys. So our first question is from Brad Fenn. Question on the Fruit Street bridge work. As shown in phase 1/ongoing picture, eastbound was removed and rebuilt. In the picture, you can see wood framing under the westbound lane. Will the northwest lane go through that section? If so, that means a good deal of earth will be removed from 495 North and the homes along Saddle Hill Road. Is this correct?
Thank you, Roy. Brad, yes, to answer the first part of your question, ramp WN will be placed under the Fruit Street Bridge, and there will be a retaining wall along that ramp. That'll be a soil nail retaining wall. There will be some necessary soil to be removed, but it's like I said, it's going to be the remaining soil will be retained with a retaining wall.
Thank you, Chris. No questions in either the Q&A or raise hands, but let's give everyone some time to have some questions come in.
I think, Don, if you want to get to that slide that talks about Fruit Street, the question was popped up at the slide about 14.
So this is the photo here hung of Fruit Street for that question. So if that helps, I apologize. Didn't get there. Chris already answered the question by the time I got to the slide. So
Brad has a follow-up question on that. So the lane will go where the wood wall is located.
yeah, can we we'll bring in Josh as well from our highway team. And obviously, if Mark Champ from Barletta wants to offer anything, but we can get into a few more details for Brad, as long as we're waiting on other questions. So
Yeah, so in the picture that Don has on the screen right now on the left side, so that wood wall right now is just holding up some of the existing soil that's underneath Fruit Street Bridge. It's just a temporary construction wall. So ramp NW is actually kind of, so that concrete wall that's at the very right side of the picture, that's the future abutment. And ramp NW is going to be about 5 feet to the left of that. So it's not going fully under where that wall is, but a partial portion of where that wall is was where ramp NW will be located. And slide, like some of the renderings on slide like 33, I think, Don kind of show that in the proposed condition. Or any of these really. This one has it too.
sorry, I'll get to my PowerPoint's on a bit of a lag. Apologize. It's getting there. It's thinking about it.
That one has it. So you can see where the Fruit Street column is kind of underneath. It's honestly a little shaded by the trees here, but ramp NW goes up and under. Well, it goes under Fruit Street Bridge, and there is some soil, Chris mentioned, being taken out, and there is a retaining wall being installed along the right side of ramp NW there to minimize the amount of soil removal.
You're cutting in a little bit out, Josh, but I think they might have cut most of it. Yeah, so that photo's looking sort of here underneath Fruit Street, the previous photo. And as Josh said, it's off, just off here. And yeah, NW comes off of 495 under Fruit Street and then gets up over 495, where it joins with the ramp that's coming off of 495 southbound to join to make a 2-lane on-ramp to I-90 westbound in this area here. So yes, there's a little bit going on right in that area.
Thank you, Donald. Thanks, Josh. Our next question is from Andrew Lindemann. What is the need for moving the northbound 495 lanes next to southbound other than adding the 4th lane to northbound to Route 9?
I'd say it's multi-focus. You need to understand that the first piece of this is that we couldn't go outside the existing roadway really in any way, shape, or form because of the environmental resource areas. So we were kind of locked into the footprint of the existing roadway. But we also have to then stage the traffic, right? We have to figure out a way to build this while we're keeping traffic moving. So by building the temporary roadway in the median, it allows us to move southbound traffic into the center while we rebuild southbound and then bring northbound in its final condition. You won't have as an extensive a median between the northbound and southbound correctly, but I would say it's not just the additional lane northbound happens, and I apologize, you kind of run off the screen up here. It happens when the ramp from I-90 westbound joins 495 northbound and heads up to the Route 9 interchange up in this direction. What we need is area in here to build the additional ramps that make the connections both from the Pike eastbound to 495 northbound and from 495 northbound to I-90 eastbound. So again, if you looked at this, if we had this where you had the existing underneath, some of 495 northbound would be in this area here, and we couldn't go anywhere to the outside of these roadways because we're locked in pretty well by environmental resource areas. So anybody else, am I missing anything else there besides that answer? But I think that's generally, it's a combination of where we were constrained to where we could build, how we needed to stage the project to be able to keep traffic moving while, but also to make some accommodation for these additional on ramps to the east of 495, the future 495 northbound. I hope that answered the question. If it didn't, ask again and I'll try to say it a different way.
Thank you, Donald. Our next question is from Mark Richard. Can we get any further clarification on when this summer the first side of the Fruit Street Bridge is expected to be completed and the demo beginning on the second half?
Yeah, I can, Mark, I think you probably explain it better. So
sure, that's not a problem. No, we're finishing up the first phase right now. You'll see as we get into these next upcoming weeks, we're putting in the snow fence along the bridge, finishing up the minor bits of concrete work that we have left, and then moving into June, we're planning early June, right after Memorial Day, planning to waterproof and pave the bridge structure. There's one component that's a third-party utility. So Eversource, Comcast, and Verizon, you'll see them out there within the next couple months performing their work, the aerial work, underground work, and splicing work. So we're planning on that to be complete, hopefully by end of June, early July, something that we can't entirely control. It's based on their schedule, but we're pushing for them to be complete somewhere around the 4th of July.
Thank you, Mark. So I'll hand it back to Hung. I see we got a raise hand in the chat or in
Yeah.
on the list.
Brad, I believe you can unmute yourself and have any follow-up questions you may have. Mute yourself again. Can't hear you, Brad. All right, I'm gonna have you be muted, but hello?
I can take a stab based on what he wrote. I'm trying to follow.
On the phone, how do I unmute? You can unmute by hitting the *9. I mean *6. *6 is to unmute. What I meant to say.
Josh,
*6.
I think Josh can, while we're waiting, Josh, he's looking for some more specifics, I think, on the earthwork and the NW ramp and under Fruit Street. And so I think we can try to give him a little bit more clarity, maybe.
Yeah, so in the final condition, so he basically said 495 northbound gets moved into the median, then NW gets inserted. How much of the hillside will be removed to allow for the NW lane? So 495 northbound here isn't fully moved into the median yet. You can kind of see in this rendering there's still median between 495 northbound, southbound. Whereas where it gets crossed over I-90, that median disappears and it's just a paved median there. So 495 northbound only shifted about 30 feet. It's actually still partially on the existing barrel here. And then for NW to kind of get away from 495 northbound, start coming up so it can fly over 495 northbound, southbound. At its maximum, it ends up being about 100 feet from the existing edge of pavement. So it does get right, like I said, up under that Fruit Street abutment. So if you have driven over the bridge and see where that abutment is, that's the worst case scenario for NW. And it's about 100 feet off the existing edge of pavement. As it gets back close to the 495 northbound, that gets minimized. So that retaining wall there ends up being about 27 feet above the roadway at its highest point. So it does take out a decent amount of that hillside, but it does stay within the state highway layout, and we are minimizing as much as we possibly can.
Thank you, Josh. Brad did follow up and said that makes sense. Thank you. 100 feet seems like a lot. So our next question is from Steve Schultz. I believe that it was mentioned briefly earlier that the Fruit Street Bridge might need to be closed once or twice. If true, when do you see this happening?
Currently, what we're projecting for closures would be minimized to probably overnight to a weekend when we complete the second phase of Fruit Street. So the majority of the work will be complete on the bridge structure. But it's the approaches on either side. The roadway has to come up and grade a couple feet. So we may have to close Fruit Street just to do the full depth construction on either side of the bridge. And the only thing that I'm not entirely sure of is, again, the third-party utilities. There may be some intermittent closures for them to perform their work. And I'm sure once we know of those, they'll be communicated to the public.
Thank you, Mark. So I see no questions right now. So I think this would be a good time to put up the contact page for the project. Just so that, you know, anybody that wants to share any further comments or questions after the hearing know how to do so. Yeah, so if you scan that QR code, that'll take you to the project event site. Also, the project email is listed there. So for any further questions or comments, please feel free to send it to that email address.
Roy, it looks like we don't have any upcoming questions or hand raised or phone in. Give it a few more beats.
Yeah, I'd say we could give it a moment. We did get a comment from Brad. Thank you for this session. Very helpful. Thank you, Brad.
All right, with no further questions, I'd like to thank everyone for their time here tonight, and thank you for listening to our presentation. I want to wish everyone a pleasant evening, and go Bruins, go Celtics. Thank you.
Thank you.